Good morning and happy Saturday, everyone. My name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's NBA DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more eyes on these videos and more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. Also, check the links in the description below. If you're not already a member of Occupy Fantasy today, come on in and join. You get access to the model you see here, which I'll be using throughout the video, which gives you ownership percentage, allows you to sort by value, our OF index, which will show you the best plays on a given slate. We also have a single lineup builder, multi lineup builder, private Discord server full of seasoned DFS pros to help you improve your game. There's a 30-minute window leading up to each slate's lock where you can ask your lineup and slate specific questions. All right, without further ado, let's get into the slate. We got 9 games to get through here. And for those of you who know me, you know I like to go team by team, game by game. We're going to do it pretty quickly. I will say this, it's nice to see we have most of the injury reports out. There is a lot of major news we're still waiting on, so it's going to kind of be one of those days where it's wait and see. But I'll let you guys know the scenarios that we need to keep an eye on and how to deal with the injury news as it breaks. I have a DraftKings window and a FanDuel window open. I'll kind of click through, add my favorite plays on both sites throughout this video, and you can kind of see where I'm started with my builds for each site. All right, so let's get into this here. Again, we got 9 games. There is a 4 o'clock game that we can totally ignore. Obviously, that's not on the main slate. First game on the slate is at 7 p.m. And let's see here. All right, we got a bunch of 7 o'clock games. I'm going to make sure I go in the right order. First game on the slate, we have the Pistons hosting the Pacers. Pistons are 5.5 point underdogs at home, looking at a 229 point game total here. All right, so first and foremost with Detroit, there is a lot of injury news. Marvin Bagley's probable, good to see. Bojan out. Alec Burks out, Cade Cunningham out, Hamidou Diallo out, Jaden Ivey out, Isaiah Stewart out. So there's a lot to like here for Detroit. Not only is their rotation going to be thinned out tonight, but they're also in a pretty good matchup against the Pacers. Pacers are the better team, but they really don't have much in terms of defense. So anyone who starts here is going to look good. First and foremost, Killian Hayes. He's been tough to trust lately, but with guys like Burks, obviously Cunningham, who's been out, but also Diallo, Ivy, Boyan, all out, he's going to have to see increased usage. He's only 5K flat over on DK, almost 50% owned over there, but I think it's justified. And then 28% over on FanDuel. So if I'm building like a single entry cash type build, I think I do want to start with Killian Hayes here, especially on DK where he's only 5K flat. Big slate, 9 games. We're going to have a lot to choose from, but for the sake of the video, I'll start with Hayes. I'll pencil him in. If we find better guard options throughout, we can kind of pull him and adjust as we see fit. I do think they're pretty high owned for tournaments, some of these Pistons. So if you can find better options, feel free. But I think in single entry, excuse me, and in cash games, there's plenty of reasons to like a lot of these guys. We've seen Magruder start at times. He'd be fine as value. Corey Joseph, if he were to start over Killian Hayes, I'd like him a lot here. His price is up, so he's not quite as appealing of a value play as he has been. And then RJ Hampton, surprisingly decent option here. I'd prefer to see him in the starting lineup. Pretty inconsistent minutes, but again, they have so many bodies missing tonight. I think he's going to have to play like 26 to 28 minutes, and he's been pretty close to a fantasy point per minute producer his last few games, so I don't mind RJ Hampton as a punt. But really, it's going to be tough to trust any of these guys, just given the fact that this is a team that's tanking. I also don't mind Isaiah Livers, especially over on FanDuel, where he's only 4,300. He looks good here. James Wiseman, pretty inconsistent, but with Stewart out, his minutes should be a bit more secure. There's just a lot to like on Detroit here. Marvin Bagley as well on FanDuel. I mean, we'll take a quick look at these power forward options for Detroit, just because I think they're going to be very popular. Livers 4,300. He's been excellent, over 20 fantasy points in 3 consecutive games. And that's with some of those bodies that are out in the lineup. So he's going to see increased usage tonight. I'll go ahead and pencil him in. I actually think Bagley could be the more popular play. He's listed as probable, dealing with an ankle injury. Very inconsistent, but a very high ceiling. If he's in the starting lineup, I'd like him here as well. Honestly, you're probably going to want to leave some room to pivot, but as things stand, I wouldn't hate playing both Livers and Bagley together. I just really like the paced up game environment. And the fact that they're relatively cheap. So kind of take your pick of Isaiah Livers or Marvin Bagley. For me, I lead Bagley. But yeah, I think you could play both of those guys. Really, I mean, first game on the slate, first team on the slate. There's a lot to like for Detroit. I do consider Hayes a core play. Really like Bagley. Wiseman's fine. All those secondary wing options I mentioned, definitely in play as well. But let's move over to the Indiana side of things. Don't want to spend too much time on one team. We got a lot to get through. Halliburton is questionable. T.J. McConnell's questionable. Miles Turner is questionable. All right, so this is a difficult situation to kind of parse through. If Halliburton's in, he looks excellent here. He's expensive, over 10K, but he does have a very high ceiling in this matchup. If he's out and McConnell's in, McConnell becomes one of the better guard plays on the slate, but McConnell's also questionable. So if both of these guys are out, then maybe we see Chris Duarte slide in the starting lineup. Someone like Jordan Noir could look interesting here as well. I know these aren't true point guards, but they are the types of plays that can take the ball up the court. Um, and yeah, we've seen in the past they've had some pretty big games, especially Nemhard and Duarte if they're given the opportunities here. Buddy Hield's going to have a higher ceiling if a couple of these guys are out. Very scoring dependent as a guard, though, so even with increased opportunity, he's going to have a wide range of outcomes. The good news here is that this is the first game on the slate, so we should know what we're doing going in. Again, Miles Turner also questionable. If he were to sit, maybe we see Jalen Smith get the start at center. He'd become extremely appealing. But yeah, this is kind of a wait and see scenario. Just taking a look at some props and things like that. Yeah, most of this stuff's off the board right now. If Turner's in, I like him a lot. If Field's in, I like him a lot. Obviously, Halliburton's going to be a good play. But if Turner's out, I mean, I mentioned Jalen Smith, but we could also see Isaiah Jackson potentially slide into the starting lineup. He'd be an interesting play there. Then guys like Nemhard, Mathurin's hurt, so he's not going to be in. But also Nora and or even Naismith might be interesting here. So it's tough to talk through these situations where we know there's pending injury news, but we don't know how it's going to break yet. Again, Halliburton and McConnell both questionable, as is Miles Turner in that front court. If Halliburton's out and McConnell's in, McConnell looks great. If Halliburton's in, he's a solid play, but not really a priority. If Turner's out, Isaiah Jackson and or Jalen Smith are going to look great depending on who starts at center. I will say Jackson's been the better fantasy producer this season, so even if Smith starts, Smith's going to be a little bit risky. Um, and Jackson probably a little bit safer if he's in the starting lineup. So just keep an eye on that situation. It is fluid. I do think Turner plays, but again, we're waiting on this injury news. We don't have it yet. And then in the backcourt, whoever starts here, I mean, if both these guys are ruled out, we're going to see some value open up. Guys like Nora and Nemhard are going to become very appealing. So once again, a tough game to talk through. We do have the injury report, but we have nothing definitive. Bunch of questionable guys, so kind of a wait and see situation here with Indy. But it is a great game environment against the Pistons, so definitely don't ignore that one. But again, locks at 7 p.m. Eastern. We should have that news. All right, moving into the next game on the slate now, we have the Heat at the Magic. The Heat are 2.5 point favorites on the road in Orlando. The word on the street is Kyle Lowry is going to be back tonight. That's going to cut into the usage of the other starters. Butler, Bam, Hero, Oladipo won't be as interesting coming off the bench. Probably loses a little bit of usage there. But I will say this, it is a back-to-back. Don't be surprised to see Jimmy Butler suddenly ruled out. If Butler's ruled out, Adebayo and Hero would both look excellent here. So just wait and see. Keep an eye on that. No injury report at all right now, but Butler has set out a bunch of back-to-backs this season, as have a lot of these Miami Heat players. Lowry being back isn't going to be as significant as Butler being out if both those things ring true. So another situation, unfortunately, we kind of have to wait and see. All right, moving over to Orlando now. Jonathan Isaac's out, unfortunate, and Kevon Harris is back down with the G League. So this is a healthy team, kind of priced where they should be. I don't mind getting this some Fultz. I don't mind getting this some Banchero. But with Carter back, we're no longer going to Mo Wagner. Really, you see no ownership on these Magic. Not only are they healthy and priced where they should be, but they're also in a terrible matchup against the Miami Heat. So while if you're landing on maybe Carter, Fultz, Banchero, even Franz Wagner, if you're playing a ton of lineups, there's just no priorities for me here on Orlando. So we can move into the next game now. Um, let's see here. We got the Utah Jazz at the Charlotte Hornets. The Jazz are 2.5 point favorites on the road. We're looking at a 231 point game total here. Let's take a look. Yeah, so no LaMelo Ball, no surprise there. James Bouknight is available. I think he's with the G League though. Theo Maledon listed as available. Cody Martin out, Terry Rozier is probable, and Mark Williams is questionable. So first and foremost, if Mark Williams is out, Nick Richards becomes maybe the best value play on the entire slate. So keep an eye on this situation. Another game locking at 7. We will have this news prior to lock. If Williams is in, I like him a lot on both sides. Really solid center option where he's sub 6K. He's flashed a pretty high ceiling ever since Plumlee was traded away to the Clippers. So Definitely keep an eye on this front court. If Williams is in, he's good. If he's out, Nick Richards becomes excellent. Other options here. Terry Rozier listed as probable. He's totally reasonable, just over 8K. Hayward, fine. Oubre getting expensive, but I don't mind him in tournaments. And then PJ Washington in a pretty thin power forward position makes some sense. So really, all the starters here look good. Even Dennis Smith Jr. coming off the bench if you're playing a ton of lineups. But the situation we really, really need to keep an eye on is that center spot. If Williams is in, I like him a lot. If he's out, Nick Richards becomes excellent value. So definitely wait and see on this one. Keep an eye on the news. But as things stand, no real priorities. I will say Terry, Hayward, Oubre all look really good to me. Um, but I'm not rushing to any of them. Again, 9 game slate. We have a lot of options to choose from. There's going to be some value in some of these other spots. We can move over to the Utah side of things now. Taking a look, Jordan Clarkson listed as questionable. No Colin Sexton. Micah Porter is with the G League. That's not exactly significant. So if Clarkson's out again, that means we could go back to THT. His price is up a little bit, but he has been consistently over 30 fantasy points. If Clarkson's in, not going to be very interested in Horton Tucker. Chris Dunn coming off the bench, and Clarkson's absence been decent as well. But if Clarkson is in, Chris Dunn won't be interesting at all. So we got to wait and see on this news as well. Guys that are interesting regardless. I think Laurie Markkinen, you could play him over on FanDuel where he's 9K flat. Not a priority though. Walker Kessler has been getting a ton of blocks and steals. Decent center play on both sides. AK on FanDuel, definitely more expensive, but at the same time, you get extra points for those blocks and steals, which makes him more appealing over there. I think Kelly Olynyk's fine as a power forward, really not that exciting of a play unless we get some guys suddenly ruled out. But as things stand, if Clarkson's in, there's really just nothing here for the Jazz I'm all that excited to play. So we'll move into the next game now. If Clarkson's out, I think you could go back to THT, maybe even Chris Dunn in large field tournaments, but he is risky. Those minutes aren't as secure as maybe you think they would be coming off the bench. All right, moving into the next game now. We're in the 7:30 window. We've got the Celtics at the Hawks. The Celtics are 5-point favorites on the road here. Very healthy 238.5 point game total. Talking about Boston, we have Peyton Pritchard out, Robert Williams out, and Danilo Gallinari obviously out for the season. It's a little bit annoying they list him on the injury report every day, but is what it is. So Tatum drawing a lot of ownership. There's other good payups on this slate. Giannis naming one is questionable. I mean, if Giannis is out, I think we see a lot more ownership go to someone like Tatum. Tatum sub 11K both sides. He's been consistently hitting near 50 fantasy points per game. I think he's a good play here. Personally, really like the matchup with Atlanta. I like the discount you're getting off of Giannis. And if you don't want to wait and see if Giannis is going to play tonight, yeah, you could go to Tatum, maybe play a little bit more balanced of a build and feel pretty good about it. Seeing decent ownership going to Tatum on both sides, I do like him here. Not really going to call him a priority yet, just because there are a lot of good pay up options, but as things stand, he is one of my favorite plays on the board. Jalen Brown looks fine, just over 9K now. Tough for me to want to get to him. Derek White, when he's hot, has a very high ceiling. He's been shooting well, but at the same time, he's kind of priced where he should be. Al Horford does see a bit of a boost with Robert Williams out, but not enough of a boost for me to want to force him in. Marcus Smart, Brogdon fine his last minute, but really nothing we're prioritizing here other than maybe Tatum, but it is a nice game environment against the Hawks. Over on the Hawks side of things rather, this is a back-to-back for them. No injury news yet. I don't anticipate anyone major sitting. Obviously, if Trey were to sit, Murray would become excellent. If Murray were to sit, Trey would become excellent. As things stand, they're both fine plays, but neither are really priorities. Don't mind Clint Capella over on DK where he's only 6,300. I think that's a reasonable price. John Collins still too cheap on DK. I don't know why his price went down. I'm gonna have to go ahead and pencil him in here. Only 4K flat for John Collins just doesn't make any sense to me. Over on FanDuel, he is 5K. I like him over there as well, but definitely a better play where he is only 4K flat. DeAndre Hunter had a really nice first half last night. Not terrible second half. Overall, pretty good game, but he's around 5K flat on both sides as well. I like him here. So if this team's healthy, I think Collins is my favorite play just because of the price, followed by Hunter. Obviously, Young and Murray have very high upside, but it is a tough matchup with Boston despite of the high game total. So yeah, all the starters look good here. The one core play for me though is John Collins over on DK, where his price went down 200 to 4K flat now. So he's going to be really tough for me to get away from. And we don't see the ownership going to him yet, which is a little bit surprising to me. So keep an eye on that one for sure. We can move into the 8 o'clock window now. Let's take a look here. We got the Bulls at the Rockets. The Bulls are 7.5 point favorites on the road in Houston. 224 point game total here. Javonte Green's out. Lonzo Ball is likely out for the season. That's the only significant injury news here. So another team kind of healthy, priced where they should be. Levine, DeRozan, Vooch, all fine on both sides. I'd say you could play any one of these three guys and feel pretty good about it. If I'm picking and choosing, I guess I'd probably go Levine on FanDuel, where he's, I don't know. I take that back. I think you got to go DeRozan over on FanDuel, where he's a little bit cheaper than Levine. 8,100 seems very cheap for him. Levine 8,300, but yeah, DeRozan was up in the 9K range for much of the season. We see those 40 point games in there. He does have a 50 fantasy point ceiling. In a matchup like this one, I don't mind penciling him in. I haven't really added much to this FanDuel build yet, so I'll go ahead and add DeRozan. I like him against Houston. Levine, a little bit more expensive, probably a little bit higher of a ceiling. I think you could go either way. Personally, for me, I don't know. Is the 200 savings really worth it? I think Levine does have the higher ceiling. I'll go Levine for now. I think you can go either way. Keep an eye on ownership. Levine a little bit lower owned, so maybe in tournaments he is the better play. DeRozan probably a little bit safer where you're getting him for that discount. But both he and Levine and then Vucevic, all very solid options here in an excellent matchup. With Pat Beverly now in the fold, I'm really not all that interested in this backcourt. White, Caruso, Ayo, none of them really have any interest to me. Pat Beverly starting getting some ownership, but I think they're better guard value plays on this slate. So really, that's it for Chicago. Take your pick between Levine and DeRozan. I think both of them are really strong here. Vooch a little bit overpriced center, much deeper position than those wing spots. So don't like him as much, but definitely lower owned. So in tournaments, I think that makes some sense. Except on DK, I mean, he is drawing more ownership than both DeRozan and Levine. A little bit surprising for me to see, but keep in mind you do have two center spots over there, so it's not totally insane or anything like that. All right, Houston. I'm gonna pull up. I think we have an updated NBA injury report now. It is 12:30 Eastern Standard. Let me just switch over to that. Make sure we're not missing anything. Let's see. Just going through quickly. I don't think anything's changed. All the Pistons we expected to be out are still out. Halliburton, McConnell, Turner still questionable. No new news. Okay. So we're in good shape. We can keep going. So the Houston Rockets, Kevin Porter Jr. is now listed as probable. He's been upgraded. So this is going to be a healthy team here. Green, Porter, both fine plays. Neither are going to be priorities. There's just better guard value. These guys are kind of priced where they should be. If one was out, the other would be very appealing. But again, healthy team, kind of tanking, pretty flat rotation. So really tough to trust anything here. No major starters are out. So guys like Eason, Martin, Tate, kind of borderline viable. None are priorities though. And then Sengun, really talented player, but they've been limiting his minutes, so I'm just not getting there either. So really nothing for Houston I'm all that excited about. They're healthier than they've been in a couple weeks, so just no real value to be had there. So we can move into the next game on the slate now. Very interesting one here. We have the Dallas Mavericks at the Grizzlies. Grizzlies are 6 point favorites at home, looking at a 223.5 point game total here. So yeah, the big piece of news here, obviously Luke is going to be out. Kyrie is questionable, and he was listed as a personal day, but now it's a foot injury. If he's in, he's excellent because Kyrie's out. I mean, because Luke is out. But if he's out, then there's going to be a ton of usage to go around on this team. Guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Christian Wood already drawing a ton of ownership. I think we can go to both of them with Luca out of the lineup. They're just cheap. And Wood, I mean, he's kind of been in Jason Kidd's doghouse for most of the season. But yeah, they just don't have the bodies right now. So I think they're going to have to play more Christian Wood than maybe they're even comfortable with. I think he gets over 30 minutes here. Tim Hardaway Jr., I'll go ahead and pencil him in as well. Not as interested. 5,600 on FanDuel. Actually, I take that back. He's a good play, not a great play. If Luke is out, he is a great play though, and I think at 5,300 over on DK, you could already put Hardaway in and feel pretty good about it. Excuse me. I don't know. For the sake of the video, I want to pencil them in on both sites. I just wish we had more value this early in the day with so much pending news. And if Kyrie ends up in, I don't think Tim Hardaway is going to be nearly as interesting at this ownership, which is why I'm reluctant to click him. But as things stand, I think if we're just building based on what information we have right now, you do need someone like Tim Hardaway. So Hardaway and Wood are core plays for me. Guys like Reggie Bullock, Josh Green, secondary options. But if Kyrie's in, he's excellent. He's sub 10K both sites. No Luka Doncic. Wouldn't call him like a lock in a tough matchup against Memphis, but he's going to be really strong. If he's out, we're going to see probably Jaden Hardy get the nod at point guard. If Hardy's the starting point guard here for Kyrie, he is outstanding. It could be Frank Ntilikina. If it is Frank, don't rush to him. Really not a good fantasy producer. He's more of a defensive player, but that would secure the usage and upside for players like Green, Wood, Hardaway, Bullock, etc. So this Kyrie news is massive. Again, Luka's already been ruled out. Dwight Powell's been playing better in the pick and roll with Kyrie. I think if he's in starting next to Kyrie, he has some appeal as a punt center. But yeah, another situation where we have the report, but the report is telling us we got to wait and see. So Kyrie's in, he's excellent. Regardless of whether Kyrie's in or out, Hardaway Jr. and Wood are going to look excellent. And then if Kyrie's out, Jaden Hardy's going to be a really, really strong value play. So just keep an eye on this news. Again, just to want to mention Frank Ntilikina, if he starts, I'm not going to get to him, even as a very cheap value play. Even if he's popular, he's just not a great fantasy producer. To me, that is the epitome of bad chalk. So don't be fooled by Frankie. Moving into Memphis now. Let's see here. Steven Adams still out. Brandon Clark is also out. John Morant's still out, obviously, dealing with some street issues. So let's take a look here. I mean, Xavier Tillman with no Brandon Clark, no Steven Adams. He's really the one true center on this team now. So Tillman looks great to me on both sides, especially on FanDuel where you could play him at power forward. I know already penciled in Wood, Bagley. I could go ahead and add Tillman here. Um, I mean, they're kind of interchangeable. I wouldn't mind pulling Bagley or pulling Wood if Kyrie's in and Kid says he's not going to ramp up his minutes or something like that. But as things stand, Wood's too cheap, Tillman's too cheap, Bagley's probably too cheap as long as he's starting. Really like this front court here. It kind of gives me pause to play no guys that are center only. Usually the center only plays are the better plays on FanDuel, but tonight we're getting a lot of value in that front court. So I'll go ahead and pencil them in over there. I think you can play Tillman on DK as well, but where you only have the two, I mean, where you have to use him at center only, he's not as appealing. Santi Aldama's okay. Desmond Bain, I like a lot on both sides. 8,500, totally reasonable. Tyus Jones, obviously a good play with Jaw out, but his price is way, way, way up. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. is fine, but expensive. Dylan Brooks is okay, but very low floor in spite of how many guys are out for this Memphis team. So yeah, I'd say, excuse me, as things stand, Desmond Bain's definitely my favorite play from the Grizzlies. I think you can get to him on both sides and feel pretty good about it if you're going with sort of a balanced build here. And then Tillman over on FanDuel, where he has power forward eligibility, just an excellent option. All right, let's move into the next game on the slate now. We have a very interesting game here between the Bucks and the Warriors. The Warriors are 1 point favorites at home. We're looking at a 241 point game total. Giannis questionable for the Bucks. Obviously, massive, massive news. I think he's going to want to go here against the defending NBA champs. If he's in, he's one of the best payups on the slate. He's going to rank way up there in OF index. We're seeing him just around 10% on both sides. If Giannis is out, Drew Holiday becomes excellent everywhere. Chris Middleton, even now that he's pushing AK, excellent play everywhere. Bobby Portis finally had that breakout game with Giannis out, excellent everywhere. If Giannis is out, Brook Lopez, fine as well. If Giannis is in, I still think you can maybe get to a little bit of Drew, a little bit of Lopez, but those would be the only two I'd really have much interest in. Not going to pay almost 8K for Middleton if Giannis is in the lineup, but if Giannis is in the lineup, Giannis himself is an excellent play. So another situation we need to keep an eye on. Personally, I think Giannis goes tonight, but he did sit out last game, so it wouldn't shock me if he were to sit. He is still questionable as of 12:30 Eastern Standard. So if Giannis is in, play him if you can. If he's out, Holiday, Middleton, Portis, all major priority plays. All right, so let's move over to the Golden State side of things now. We got Kaminga out. Clay is probable. Wiggins still out. Iguodala is probable. Not really a major factor, though. So Curry looks good here. He's a little bit more expensive than he's been. 10K on FanDuel, 10.7 on DK. Very low owned, though, with the high ceiling. I think he's fine. We actually saw Draymond Green get the start at center last time out. If that happens again, I think he's a solid option. DiVincenzo got the start on the wing with Kaminga out. He's a solid play where he's sub 6K on both sides. But really, this is a team, even with Wiggins out, even with Kaminga out, kind of priced where they should be. Don't hate Jordan Poole. FanDuel. Not really a play I'm ever rushing to though if Curry's in the lineup. So for me, probably my favorite Warrior, and it kind of sounds crazy to say, is Dante DiVincenzo, just because you're getting him at a good price, probably in the starting lineup here. But if we don't see him start, not going to be nearly as interested. Klay Thompson, very high ceiling, 7,300 on FanDuel, definitely the more appealing price between the two sites. But yeah, really good game environment, one of the highest totals on the slate. I think regardless of whether or not Giannis is in, you're going to want some pieces of Golden State in large field tournaments. But at the same time, it's tough to trust any of them at their given price points. They're all kind of reasonably priced where they should be. Really like Curry, not a priority though. Really like Draymond, would prefer to see him starting at center though. And then Clay looks good on FanDuel, but obviously he's scoring dependent, so that's a wide range of outcomes for him. So let's move into the next game on the slate now. Another interesting one as far as news goes, we have the Pelicans hosting the Thunder. Pelicans are 2.5 point favorites at home. 233-point game total here. We've seen the spread close. Big reason for this, Brandon Ingram is questionable. No Larry Nance, no Zion still. Alvarado out as well. So if Ingram's in, he's a good play. Like him a lot on both sites. But if Ingram is out, CJ McCollum becomes one of the best plays on the slate. 7,600 over on DK. Definitely going to be too cheap if he is the main focal point of that offense. Over on FanDuel, 8,100 would be totally fine playing that as well. But the thing is, yeah, Ingram questionable. This isn't one of the early games, so we're gonna have to wait and see with this news. I think you can get to Herb Jones, Najee Marshall, Trey Murphy as last man in. I wouldn't want more than one of those guys in my lineup, though. It's very rare that we see multiple of those players go off. If Ingram's out, I think it's more likely, but at the same time, really not going to be rushing to those wings. They're all kind of reasonably priced, not exactly cheap. Joe Val, very high ceiling as a center, definitely sees a boost in his minutes with Larry Nance out of the lineup. So I like him here. He's fine, kind of boom bust though, so not something I'd be forcing. Ingram, again, if he's in, excellent. If he's out, CJ McCollum becomes a priority everywhere for the Pelicans. All right, so let's move over to the OKC side of things. Poku out, Kenrich Williams out, so no major news there. SGA 9,200 on DK to me feels too cheap. So maybe we get Luca out and Kyrie in which case maybe I'd go to Kyrie over him. But as things stand, if Kyrie's in, I mean, if Kyrie's out, I think SGA is one of the best guard plays on the slate over on DraftKings. You're getting him at 9,200. He obviously has a very high ceiling. Definitely my favorite Thunder play tonight, even with Herb Jones lining up against him. I wouldn't look too deeply into that. We also have Josh Giddey looking decent on both sides. A little bit expensive now. That's really it. That's almost always the story for OKC. It's like we like SGA, we like Giddy. Everyone else is very, very difficult to trust. So yeah, that's all I'm really getting to. But SGA at 9,200 on DK, that just feels way too cheap to me. So I'll definitely want to get some shares of him over there. All right, moving into the next and final game on the slate now, we have the Kings at the Suns. The Suns are 4 point favorites at home. Very healthy, 240-point game total here. Yeah, so everyone knows the news. KD got hurt in pregame warmups. He's going to be out for a few weeks. He is out tonight. Josh Okogie is in, though, and Landry Shamet is out. So it's funny. Okogie comes back as KD is now out, and suddenly Okogie is one of the better value plays on the slate. 4,700 over on FanDuel, certainly considering him a core play over there. Going to go ahead and pencil him in. We just saw some huge games for him starting at the wing before KD was in the lineup. Even with Booker and Paul healthy, Okogie has looked excellent. Not nearly as popular over on DraftKings, but it is tough to fill that small forward position depending where you're paying up tonight. So I'll go ahead and pencil him in there as well. But yeah, Ayton looks really good here. Booker looks fine. Chris Paul looks fine. Definitely going to see a nice boost with KD now out of the lineup. We're getting him sub 8K on both sides, so I like him a lot as well. But really, Paul, Booker, Okogie, Ayton, all really strong plays. Main reason for that, not only is KD out of the lineup, but they're facing Sacramento team that gives up a ton of fantasy points to opposing players. So really like Phoenix here. Okogie is a core play for me, more so on FanDuel, but on both sites. Really like Chris Paul on both sides as well. If you're not looking to pay all the way up at guard for someone like SGA, you can go to Chris Paul and play a little bit more of a balanced build and feel pretty damn good about it. All right, last team now. We're talking about the Sacramento Kings here. Two G League guys are out, so nothing to really discuss. Another team kind of priced where they should be. Unlike the matchup for the Suns, this is a little bit of a downgrade in matchup for the Kings. But Same time, I mean, I'm fine getting to De'Aaron Fox. He's a little bit pricier than he should be now. The fact he's more expensive than SGA on DK is a little bit crazy to me. Shows you why I like SGA so much. But Fox is a fine play, a very low ownership. Sabonis as well, a little bit overpriced, but a fine play. And then maybe Barnes or Murray is the last minute. Herter has been very hot lately. Could see using him in large field tournaments, but certainly not a priority. All right, so I'm going to refresh the model now as I click over to FanDuel, take a look at the core options we've kind of plugged in so far. We got Tillman, Bagley, Wood in that front court. Obviously, Wood and Hardaway are going to be safer if Kyrie's out. Zach Levine, I think you could go to him or DeRozan. Probably wouldn't want both, but against Houston, I don't think it's crazy. And then Killian Hayes, with so many guys out for Detroit, is probably going to be a solid point guard play here. Wouldn't hate getting away from him at 6,100. Excuse me. We still have 9K per player left over on FanDuel, so you can kind of pick your favorite payups. Um, yeah, if Giannis is in, I think you could go to Giannis. You could get Tatum. Again, you could move Levine over to shooting guard. There's a lot of good options on FanDuel tonight. 9 game slate. Still going to get more news and more value, and we already have a lot of good value. So a lot to like there. Over on DK, very similar build. John Collins, 4K flat. I don't know what they're doing. SGA, way too cheap at 9,200. Hayes, definitely even easier to get to than he is on FanDuel. 5K flat, too cheap. Wood, Hardaway, again, a little bit better if Kyrie's out, but with Luka out, they're both really strong plays. Then I just talked through Okogie for the Suns with KD out of the lineup. So I don't think we saw any major updates to the model here. I'm going to quickly sort by ownership. Hayes, Wood, Hardaway, RJ Hampton getting a lot of love. Pretty risky unless he's starting for Detroit, so keep an eye on that one. SGA, if Corey Joseph starts, I think you go to him as a value guard on DK. Not as interested on FanDuel at 5,200. But yeah, Tatum, Bullock, Vooch, CJ McCollum. If Ingram's out, McCollum becomes a priority. So keep an eye on that piece of news as well. Similar over on FanDuel, Okogie Wood, Hardaway, Bagley, Livers. Don't know that I want to go both Bagley and Livers in a lineup, but you certainly could if you wanted to. DeRozan, Mark Williams if he's in. Again, if Mark Williams is out, Nick Richards becomes one of the better value plays on the entire slate. Giannis, questionable. If Giannis is in, he's good. If he's out, Drew and Middleton and Bobby Portis all look excellent. But no surprises when we're sorting by index. We got Giannis, Steph, Tatum, Sabonis, Fox, SGA. And then, yeah, the Indy situation, another one to keep an eye on. If Halliburton's out, McConnell's in. McConnell would look excellent. If both are out, we're going to see a lot of value there. So another situation we need to keep an eye on. Once again, my name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. I appreciate you all tuning in today. Follow me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. If you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, sign up to Occupy Fantasy. Just check those links in the description below. Let's have some fun tonight, everyone, and make some money.